Please welcome the brains trust that is today's panel. They are Ranjan Choi, Vice President for Blockchain and Supply Chain Digitization, with ATD. Ranjan Ghosh, former Global Head of Digital Manufacturing with ABB. And Thierry Faustin, Advisor with Informed Decisions, GmbH. Good morning, Ranjan and Thierry.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you? Ranjan, how are you this morning, sir?
I'm doing fine. How are you doing, Adam?
Very well, thank you very much. Thierry, how are you this morning, sir?
Yeah, very good. Afternoon here in Europe.
Well, of course it is, absolutely. Ranjan, how are you, sir?
I'm doing all right. New York is very sunny today, so looking forward to a good day.
Ah, lovely. Perfect. Right. Look, again, we've got an awful lot to get through, and it's a big topic, this one. So, question one, whether you're just starting out on the Industry 4.0 journey or starting to benefit from the results of digitalization, what are the best ways to chart a course, form a strategy, and make a roadmap towards Industry 4.0 success? So I guess it's the big sort of general opening question, where should people be looking to begin or to optimize what they're already doing? And let's start, if we can, with you, Ranjan.
Sure. Call me Rock, Adam. So I think, like all transformations, the first thing you want to do is you want to define a target operating model. So Industry 4.0 is a loaded term. There's a lot of ways you can actually achieve success, and they all look very interconnected, autonomous driving networks, very posh ideas. But all of those mean very little if they're not relevant to your company and your supply chain. So once you understand the target operating model of how do we want to operate in the Industry 4.0 world, that'll give you a lot of the agenda items that you want to pursue in the short term and the long term. My advice is, without taking too much time, is start small and leverage the gains in your small successes at the beginning to fuel your future investments. The reason being is that these transformations take a lot of investment in terms of infrastructure, in terms of human capital, and in terms of the partnerships that you have to develop. So to optimize all those things together and streamline them while you're running your business and transforming them, it's almost like changing wheels on a running car. No pun intended, because I'm in the tire industry right now. So charting that roadmap will help you streamline all your transformation items as well as keeping your business running, and then potentially finding ways to grow it in that context. So that is the best advice that I've received that I'm executing on myself.
Thank you, right? Much appreciated. I think there's much there to kind of come back and unpick, which is, the low-hanging fruit. So where can we start? You talked about partnerships. What are the key partnerships to align and all that sort of stuff? But start small and kind of, get an operating vision. Ranjan, for you, what are the kind of keys to success?
Look, there are two elements to it. One of them is when you are getting started, you need to make sure that you tie what you are trying to do to your business imperatives. You have some strategic imperatives of the business. You need to tie those business imperatives to the operational KPIs or success factors. Those operational KPIs need to be aligned to the use cases of your digital solutions that you are trying to implement. Because in that case, you have a three-way match between what you are trying to do to what is critical from an operational success, which is then tied to your business imperative. When you have that three-way tie, you can make sure what you're developing is critical and value add for the business, and thus it will be a successful. It won't be another shiny new thing out there. It will be something that will be used and will be leveraged by the business user. So that's one element of it. The second element is it is extremely critical to have as quickly as you can to have some sort of a success, which you can touch on it as well, is that how do you get to a pilot that doesn't drag on for months, that will give you a long-term payback, but something that is quickly that you can gain, something that you can share with your executives, get some additional funding, and plan for a longer-term rollout. So those two elements, I think, are very critical as you get going on your Industry 4.0 journey.
Absolutely, and I like, I can absolutely see this sort of tie into business imperatives. How important, Ranjan, is it that you speak in business terms? Because my concern about something like Industry 4.0 is, what does Industry 4.0 mean to your CEO? What does it mean to your COO or your CFO? So is one of the key things of tying it to business imperatives that it forces you to talk about the things that are important to the stakeholders?
Absolutely. And what are the key elements there is that you can deploy, there are 19 plus competency areas in Industry 4.0. If you talk about those technologies, you're going to lose your CFO very quickly. You need to be able to tie into how it is going to impact the cost productivity, how you can improve the cost productivity, how you can improve the quality of the product that you are building, how you can improve the overall lead time, not just lead time within your factory, but overall lead time to your customers, and be able to quantify those so that it can be quantified from a dollar standpoint of what it does for your business. And that is how you get engagement from your CFO. As soon as the CFO sees there is a cost productivity of $4 million that can be taken out on a year over year, I can tell you he's going to be listening to you.
Mm. Oh yeah, if you can make it better, quicker, and for the same amount or less, yeah, absolutely, you're in.
Yeah.
Thierry, that same question to you. What do you think are the good places to start?
I mean, yeah, I think the good place to start is to know where you want to go. You know, we all understand Industry 4.0 is a very, very broad concept. It can encompass a lot of things. And when you start on that journey, you will probably have to change or transform a lot more than only digital tools. What I want to say by that is you are going to change the way you cooperate with your suppliers. You are going to change the way you cooperate with your customers. So you have to remember that you're not an isolated point in the chain. We are always talking about supply chain roadmaps, end-to-end thinking, and this is a key element to consider from the start. I think Rock mentioned that having a target operating model is a foundational element, and this target operating model, in my view, should really be as broad as possible to make sure that you are optimizing the whole chain and not trying to do local optimization that is going to then disturb the previous or the next steps. And that is really the best way to achieve the best out of Industry 4.0. But then you also have to think, what are the consequences internally? You know, do you need to upskill or reskill workers? Who are the people who are going to be able to deliver that? So it's not only just about implementing new systems or tools or whatever digital technologies you want to think of. It's really a big transformation across the whole company and all of the chain. So this has to be done cooperatively.
Absolutely, completely. And I think, you know, we'll come back, if you don't mind, Thierry, to look at that kind of bigger picture. But I'd like to start, Ranjan, right, you kind of both mentioned, Ranjan said, you know, you've got to prove this out quickly. You need a quick success. Right, for you, what are some obvious, easy wins?
Yeah, it depends on the industry and where your pain points are. But to borrow Ranjan's point of view is figure out, I'm a blockchain guy, so I'm more on the data resiliency and consistency side. So when I approach a lot of the problems my clients have, I first start with, where do you actually spend a lot of time figuring out data problems that you can actually solve if you had an integrated system? What I mean by integrated system is a system like blockchain where two parties can submit data and they're interconnected instantly, so you don't have those data problems. So oftentimes, to give you the dumbest examples, purchase order and ASN messages and receipt advices have been around for years. But very rarely do you actually put in the effort to connect the dots to see if your shipments are arriving on time or are they arriving in full in the right condition. So a lot of times companies are spending time with their resources to clean up the data that they get through different systems. This could be your POS system, this could be your ERP system, or some external sources that you collaborate with your partners. So if you're using a blockchain and you're cleaning up the data through a certain common data model, I wouldn't say standardization, but a common data model that you agree upon when you submit the transactions, then you are instantly removing the need to cleanse data on both sides of the transaction. This allows you to save time. It allows you to automate the certain transactions that you're involved with. And ultimately, that gives you a very clean data set to start further analyzing your processes to optimize them. So for me, those are some of the low-hanging fruit that you can simply achieve with the existing technology, with your existing IT staff. And they drive instant value because they shave off hours and quality time off your operations.
Right, thank you. That is the cleanest, clearest, and best ever description of something you can do quickly with blockchain I have heard. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Steve. Ranjan, for you, easy wins, sir?
I would say very similar, that it really depends on the industry and the business you are in. But there are certain areas of supply chain specifically where I have seen many companies get quicker wins than others. One of them would be your inventory optimization. There are solutions out there that will help you optimize your inventory. The other one is demand planning and forecasting. This is an area supply chain traditionally have struggled with the ERP solutions that kind of meets the need, but doesn't really give you the level of detail on your demand planning and forecasting. But nowadays there are AI-driven solutions that are out there that will allow you to adjust your material forecasting plan to the minute level as possible. So any type of environmental changes, it captures it to make sure you have the most optimized inventory that you are holding. So those are some of those areas. Plus, there is a solution called robotic process automation, or RPA. There are supply sourcing areas as well as logistics operations. I have seen those produce a significant amount of productivity. Overall, I'll tell you that it really depends on what your issues are for your business that you want to probably go after. But certain of those wins are that at the end of the day, what you're really looking for, Adam, is the value. And I cannot cover that in my keynote speech tomorrow. So I'm not going to give away too much so that people don't show up for those for my keynote. But I cover a significant amount of it, of how you can identify value within your supply chain process.
Just before we get to Thierry, and just to kind of maybe slightly hold the Rak and Ranjan, your feet to the fire, we were asking for easy wins, and
Yep.
One of them was RPA and blockchain. Those strike me as easy wins if you have the skills in-house to do blockchain and to integrate and bring in RPA. Are they easy wins, or are they easy wins if you know what you're doing? So are people going to have to, an easy win involves upskilling, it involves bringing new people in. There is nothing to this. We are on a transformation journey. Stuff needs to happen.
Yeah, the RPA in general is not a complicated technology that you need to bring in a lot of people in. What you need to understand is that the process that you should be automating in the first place. If you know it's a process that you need to automate, there are technology providers out there, solution providers out there who can come in and get those processes up and going. What worries me, not so much on the technology, is when I see that people get carried away by creating a bunch of bots, but many of those processes should not even be there in the first place. They should have been simplified and optimized to begin with. So my worry is not so much of, do you have the technology capability? You can fill that gap to the knowledge that is out there in the market. That's not the issue. It's a question of, are you building bots something that really should not be there in your business in the first place? Blockchain, and I will let Rokena talk about this a bit, but blockchain is not probably as simple as robotic process automation, but I would say that it is similar process. There's enough technology providers out there who can provide you the solution. The question is, do you know who do you need to be part of your blockchain, and what type of governance model you are going to set up?
Oh, lovely. Rak?
Yeah. I'm going to piggyback on Ranjan, and forgive me if I shoot myself in the foot a little bit here, but I absolutely agree on everything he says. So people often think that Industry 4.0 is a technology challenge. It actually isn't as complicated as people think it is. It's more of a mindset and the shifting of operations from one way of doing things to another. So what I kind of mentioned to you about the benefits of the blockchain, connecting the different events together, blockchain only makes sense when you have 3 or more parties where complexity increases with the integration cost. If you still have a lot of point-to-point relationships, there are more ways to solve that problem without blockchain. You can just have data agreements to interchange in a more facile manner. That's actually more cheaper and easier to implement. But so one side of it is you got to think about how do we actually make this process simpler, and then the technology will come with it. Now, when it comes to the technology, I agree with Ranjan. There's plenty of vendors who are out there who are trying to make things simpler for you. It's not going to be your problem. It's best to coordinate with the right vendors and the partners who can help you get to where you need to be. On the blockchain side, when I was at IBM, one of the biggest success that we had was we simplified the whole Hyperledger Fabric layer, which is extremely complex and there's not a lot of skills out there. And we turned it into an API consumption layer, just like any other cloud service would. So that accelerated the adoption of blockchain for partners and ecosystems. And a lot of my colleagues, I'm pretty sure they're still on this conference today. But almost every vendor out there, when it comes to AI, when it comes to blockchain or any of these technologies, the number one thing they'll say to you is, we know it's a complicated thing, but we're making it simple for you to adopt so you can focus more on your business problems. And that's where I think this industry is going is, let's not worry about the technology too much. Let's figure out what are we going to get out of it, and then let the technology take care of the questions there.
Lovely. So actually, very much kind of echoing what Sean was talking about in the opening keynote there. If you've got the mindset, if you can think outside of the box, stuff will, these things are possible to fix. You just kind of need to elevate your thinking a bit and look at stuff differently. Thierry, of course, everything easier said than done. So easy for me to say, stood here as well. Thierry, for you, the easy wins, sir.
Yeah, so I would say the easy win, in fact, is for me a big part of the preparation of your transformation, which is about rethinking your processes before you start jumping with new tools and new technologies and new everything. I want to give an example on that. A few years ago, I was tasked to revamp, it was more procurement than supply chain, but how we were working in a few countries. And I spent what the project manager and the CFO considered a lot of time redesigning processes and not enough time in their view to work on what tools we should use. And what we ended up doing, essentially using the same tools, but with a redesign process, we could kill 80% of the time on the steps needed to transform a customer order into a purchase order to the suppliers and information to the supply chain. And the thing was there, you don't always need a lot of new technology. You need mostly new ways of doing things. And then you can see that there is a lot of value or non-value added in what you do today because you have evolved since you design your processes. And without changing tools, you are just going to do things faster and better.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, so let's move on to our second question. How can we integrate digital tools to increase transparency, agility, and efficiency? Thierry, let's start with you this time if we can. Thierry?
Oh, sorry.
No, I probably mumbled, I do that. If we can start with you on this one, thank you.
No, I mean, that's okay. No, sure. Yeah, that's a very good question because it goes directly into interoperability, and that's not easily achieved. I think Raik and Ranjan really described and talked about the multitude of diverse solutions, what you can do, what you can change, what you can transform there. So the first thing when you want to use different tools is to think how they are going to be able to interoperate. Raik mentioned, data formats as an example, and that's as simple as this. But again, I would say somehow it's also coming back to the end-to-end thinking, because the tools are, if you pile up too many of them, then it becomes a big jumble, and things are going to fall. So strive for simplicity. And when I say simplicity, I don't mean integrated solutions, because there is no one size fits all, and there is no one tool that is going to do everything for you. So you need to be very careful in what you choose there. And really, again, think about the outcome. What do you want to achieve there, so that you are going to be able to look at the integration in a efficient way from the start.
Lovely. Thank you very much,
Planning
Steve.
is essential.
And Ranjan, that same question to you, sir. How can we integrate digital tools to increase transparency, agility, and efficiency?
Well, first of all, you need to really make a choice of which one of those you're gonna choose, right? So essentially, you cannot really choose agility and efficiency at the same time, because it's really a balancing act. If your focus is absolute efficiency, you are going to leave out certain agility, because the best efficiency you would have is that you move everything offshore, everything is done. You are going to lose some flexibility because of it. But if you want some flexibility, you are going to lose some efficiency, because you will have to bring some of the operation within United States and other areas where you have that flexibility, but it's going to cost you some more. So you need to make a choice from a business standpoint, which one of these is more important than the other. Your technology integration then needs to fit into that model, because if it is agility that you are after, you have certain solutions that you can go after. For example, blockchain would be one of them. Is definitely, you can look into it. So the point there is that you don't really have a fixed technology suite of how you integrate the solution. It really depends on what is critical to you, and you need to fit your technology platforms to it.
Reminds me of Randy Zuckerberg's entrepreneur's dilemma: work, fitness, family, friends. I can't remember what the other one. Fun. Pick three. So it's that exact thing. Look, where am I? There. I have lots more questions for Ranjan and Thierry, but of course this isn't about me asking questions. So please do raise your virtual hands, and we'll bring you straight up and get your questions to them. But that same question for you, I guess, building on what Ranjan and Thierry have talked about. How can we best integrate digital tools to increase either transparency or agility or efficiency?
Yeah, I agree on all ends that Thierry and Ranjan mentioned, but let me add a little bit more of a practical mindset here. We talk about the mindset changes being the biggest thing. So when we talk to vendors about Industry 4.0 solutions, I think Thierry and Ranjan both referred to it indirectly, is that there's no one solution that does everything. And there's a lot of solutions that do different bits and pieces of it. So what's the best way for you to recognize what are the best tools and how do we integrate them so that it's a seamless integration? Because this is a cloud world now. And the word is, be agile, be experimental, and test as much as you can until you really know what it is that's important to you. And what I mean by that is typically in the ERP days, we issue an RFP for an ERP implementation. And then you have the SAP, the Oracles of the world come in with a full stack solution. You choose one of them, and then you're kind of set with them for the next 20, 30 years. That's not how it works today anymore. The advice that I always give new technology adopters is, pick a technology that makes sense to you, and then talk to a couple of vendors and do POCs with a lot of them. See what are the commonalities that you can drive from them, and that's going to be what your internal core capability needs to be. So if it's an AI solution, then you got hundreds of different AI solutions out there. Figure out which ones provide the right value to you and the right scalability in the right context, and see what are the common patterns you see that are right to you. And then go after one or two partners that can help you achieve your mission. That way you will, number one, it's agile, literally. Second thing is, you'll actually save a lot of money over time, because to choose one technology, go all in on it, and then you figure out you got to pivot, that's a huge pain for you. And the third thing is, obviously, you're avoiding vendor lock-in, because while a lot of these vendors are working around data standardizations, we are not there yet. It's still going to be a couple of years until standards are fairly well proliferated across all these global solutions. And you want to be able to be nimble in your organization when you need to pivot when that time comes. So that's kind of a practical advice that I hope resonates with a lot of people.
Thank you very much, Steve. It's interesting, isn't it? If you sort of look at I find this interesting, you look at things in a kind of wider perspective. business language that's cut through has always been sort of synergy and all this kind of nonsense. The only IT-based phrase that has ever cut through that I can think of is agile. And it's interesting how technology has become so much more important to businesses nowadays that agile has become adapted, and it is now, it's a brand on its own, agile. Every company wants to be agile, and it started in that technology way because I think technology is so much more relevant to businesses nowadays. Of course, telling you all things you know. Let's bring in a different voice to this conversation. I think we have a question from Rob at DI Central, asker of good questions. Rob, are you there, sir?
Yeah, hi. Rakjun, is that how you say it? I'm sorry.
Rack is what he said. Just call him Rack.
Rack. Pleasure. Rack, I work in, this is all I do is I work in supply chain data and integration with trading partners. And, I sat in on a lot of blockchain meetings and I can understand some of the applications with the track and trace and making sure, you're not getting any counterfeit drugs in the supply chain. That I could see that's a pretty important one. And I sat in way back when with the GS1 or the UCC net at the time, talking about synchronization of data and getting the perfect PO and having all the proper product information from the get-go. And I could see the benefit of that, although, that's still lacking in being implemented even 20 years later. So I'm struggling, and I'm wondering if you could help me out, just understanding, and I actually do business with American Tire distributors. I know some of your coworkers for years now, and I do the best in meeting suppliers and their trading partners at their needs level or capabilities level to get the data, because that is the hardest challenge in doing it all. It's really not the technology. It's really just, matching it up and getting the integration done. So again, I'm sorry, I just wanted to set the table there a little bit, but really, I just haven't heard really the business problem that you're solving at American Tire distributors with.
1 second.
So I was just wondering if kind of clarify that for me or help me out.
Hold on. I need to
That would be helpful.
step out of
Well,
the meeting.
Rob, I hope I captured your name correctly. First of all, thank you for your business with American Tires. Always happy to work with our partners. So you're absolutely right. There are some challenges to adopting blockchain in the tire industry per se. Tires are not serialized. They're not like CPG goods or electronics products where they come in uniform sizes and you can stack them up and read RFID chips off of them. So yes, there's a lot of issues around track and trace that we haven't been able to unlock yet. However, the idea about blockchain is beyond just traceability. There's a couple of things that we see in the industry that comes from data problems itself. What I mean by that is because we don't have pure end-to-end visibility across the data, all the data is siloed in the different participants, from the manufacturers to the retailers. And what does that mean? Well, on one end, we got overproduction of tires. Yes, the pandemic has hit the production cycle, but there's a lot of tires being produced in the world, 250 million in the US in replacement tires today. On the retail side, though, the fill rates are traditionally very poor, meaning 50 to 80% is a typical number that we measure these days. If this was a CPG industry, you would actually expect something like 99.9%. So why is that? One part is overproducing, the other part is not getting enough. It's a data problem. Distribution data is not uniform. People do not fully understand how inventory moves from site to site. And this is a problem that we're trying to solve with data. And where we see blockchain helping is that tires do follow GS1 context to some extent, but we don't fully see end-to-end how a tire industry moves because everybody's playing point-to-point today. The logistics are redundant, meaning that tire retail points are very uniform. There's only X amount of them on the market, and every single tire maker is shipping half-full containers to those locations in hopes of filling customer needs. So the first thing we're trying to do is, if we get pure inventory visibility across the supply chain, can we better predict and match demand with supply? And then companies like ATD, the distributor, can optimize the logistics around it to make sure that we can actually fill more tires where they need to be. Just to give you an example, if I need a specific tire and I'm in Seattle and that tire is only available in Miami, I'm not going to wait a couple of months for that tire to come all the way across the country, right? We want to predict those needs as soon as possible with inventory movement and then try to optimize the supply chain to fill those needs without delay. So those are the high-level concepts that I'd like to share without going into too much detail. But I'm confident that the blockchain will transform the way we collaborate with our partners.
Yeah, it sounds like you need to do it on a industry level, though, more of a collaboration with your competitors, possibly. And if you're shipping to a location and your truck is only half full, right? Because there's a lot of tires, but maybe the competitors have issues with that or something. Is it? I mean, am I kind of following you here correctly? I mean, I understand the inventory levels, and we're working in automotive. Obviously, there's the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. You have to share the inventory throughout, and you need to share that on a network level in a way. And you're saying that blockchain is the way to do that. Is the cleanest way
So,
possible.
without taking too much time from our colleagues, you're absolutely right. One of the most important things about blockchain is how do we get the ecosystem to play together? Companies who have not really talked to each other in decades. And my experience at IBM, we can make that happen. For example, TradeLens, we were able to get container carriers to collaborate with each other who never actually shared data before. And with IBM Food Trust, when Walmart was collaborating with the likes of Kroger and others, when you see a common problem in the industry and you recognize that you can't solve it alone, that's when you start to recognize, do I need to really participate in this ecosystem to solve it with the group together? Because the group voice is often more transformative than individual companies when it comes to the industry.
That's interesting. Thank you.
Rob, thank you very much indeed.
All right, thanks.
Really brilliant contribution. Thank you, Rob. Much appreciated. Take care. Right, lovely. So where are we? So what are the best ways to deliver cross-channel and end-to-end visibility to improve revenue and inventory performance? Ranjan, let's start with you this time, if we may.
Yeah, from an end-to-end visibility standpoint, one of the best ways that I have seen it being leveraged is using something called digital twin or digital supply chain control tower, right? So essentially, you build an end-to-end visibility of your raw materials all the way from the source to your final product going into your retail market. So utilization of digital twin capability is one of the best ways that you can provide the end-to-end visibility.
Fantastic. Thierry, same question to you, sir.
Yeah, I think that's somehow the best answer that could be given. In the way that if you have a digital twin, you know what's happening. But again, we come back into what was just discussed before about data availability and data communication from one point to another. Because if the data is not clean and if the data is not available, then somehow you have nothing. And I want to give the example, I don't know if you heard that in Europe, the other day, they discovered 26 million doses of COVID vaccines that were, forgotten in a warehouse. I'm like, how can you do that? As the person who just asked a question, in the pharma industry, you are supposed to have a track and trace, so you know exactly where the product has been, who has done what to it, and where it is. So obviously there was a hiccup there, if I can say, in the end-to-end visibility. But the best way to achieve that, is to be able to trace on a computer screen where the things are and how they are working together to deliver the value you want to deliver and to make sure the products reach the customers as they are needed.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Steve. We're going to bring another voice into the conversation again. We have another question from our audience. This is Ed at Consumers Energy, I believe. Good morning, Ed. How are you, sir?
Hey, good morning, and thanks, gentlemen. This could be for all of you or one of you. It depends on how you guys feel about the question. So my question, goes a little bit into the earlier comments about the quick wins, but on the other side of that, what's your advice for industries that may be extremely behind in a lot of things, but looking to accelerate and leapfrog things in terms of this? And what are those fundamental things that might be required in order to take some of these steps? For example, process orientation or end-to-end thinking or things like that that might prevent big steps. And where my head is going is along the lines of preventing similar solutions across different business units that are overlapping in preventing that kind of scenario?
It's a lovely question. Who would like to go first? I get to pick. Ranjan?
Yeah, so look, what you need to understand is that there is no one answer for you, is what I'm trying to get to. It really depends on where you are at from a business standpoint. There are certain businesses you really need to optimize your process or redesign your process before you do anything to start with, because unless you get that process element right the first time around, you're just going to end up digitizing a whole bunch of items that eventually is really going to do more harm than good for you, right? If that is an area that you already have mastered, which means you have gone through your process optimization, you really need to look at, which we talked about earlier, is that where is your true value? You cannot start with everything, as you mentioned, is that you are way behind. So you need to identify, where am I going to get the true value and biggest bang for the buck? And once you have accomplished that, then you can go into much more sophisticated solutions and technologies. So that is how I would kind of say this, that a key element for you is really making sure you optimize and you redesign your business process, if that is not something you have done in the past. Because once you get going with it, it is going to be very hard for you to redesign your process back up again, because you already have digitized waste in many cases that you should not have done in the first place.
Thank you very much indeed. Rak, if your company is a bit behind and you want to leapfrog, what are the things you definitely need to do?
Yeah, the one thing that I always say is don't follow the herd. Just because one industry adopted RFID on all their products, or one company adopted AI to sort out all the different flavors of their ice cream, those are the solutions that they chose for themselves. And the way I look at it is, if you want to transform the way you operate, you got to look at the industry and how can I be the leader in telling the industry, look, guys, this is how the industry needs to evolve. Otherwise, you're all going to fall behind and we're going to be the leaders there, right? So I take an outside-in view is, what is a common problem that all of our industry participants are facing? So it could be the consumer, it could be my supplier, it could be a data problem, or it could be a validation problem, meaning we're spending too much time asking if everybody's telling the truth, or is it an existential threat, meaning there's another country eating our lunch in our sector, right? So once you identify that common problem, that'll give you some initial thoughts about how do we mold the strategy for us as an industry to win. And in that playbook, where do I play a role? And that'll start cracking the conversations about what parts of it can be addressed by the industry and what parts of it can be addressed by me to change myself and give myself a competitive advantage while leading that transformation. So once that long-term strategy is thought out, then you could be the leader in two things, right? You could start leading the innovation internally and being a role model example. But the second thing is you could start reaping the benefits as a first mover to say, these are the things that I've actually seen help my industry grow, and I'm going to use that to even fuel the acceleration of my differentiation. I hope that helps.
Thank you much, Steve. Ed, I know you dropped out temporarily there. We'll send you a link so that you can get all of Rak's answer, because it was brilliant. It was everything you need. So it's a shame you missed it. Thierry, same question to you. If you're an industry that's a bit behind, or a company that's a bit behind, you want to leapfrog, what's the thing you need to get right?
Yeah, the thing you need to get right is what you want to achieve with that. And what I want to say is, you have to remember that innovation is something that's new to you. You know, some people, I think Rak already mentioned that a bit, is some people may have already solved the same problem as you, but just in a different country, in a different industry, in a different sector. So make sure you really identify what is the problem you want to solve, and look at the existing solutions. Don't follow always the last tech or the last buzzword, because very often they are not what you need. You know, it's not because it's in the air that you need to breathe it. So really pay attention to that. Pay attention to making sure you are solving your business problem, because this is what you are focusing on. Sorry. And the last thing I would say as well is, when you talk to suppliers who are going to provide a lot of very good solutions, somehow, if it's too good to be true, it is too good to be true. So, there is no magic wand, but a lot of people, when you don't really know what you want, where you go, you don't really understand the solution, you are, if I may say that, you are going to bite the very nice red apple and fall to sleep for the next century. So just be very careful. Somehow it's a lot of due diligence on what you need and what's really available, and what you need may not be the latest crazy space rocket, but just something that's proven and works elsewhere.
Thank you very much indeed.
If I can add into just one into when I talk to CXOs on a regular basis, one thing that I like to say is that when you're looking for opportunities, right, what will be the easiest opportunities? Sometimes the hardest ones to find are the ones that you see every day, which means they are all around you, but you don't really pay attention of how you can improve those processes and digitize them. So look out for your day-to-day processes of where you may not have thought that the opportunity exists of digitization, and how you can use digital solution to improve on it.
Ed, I hope that was all useful. As I said, we'll send you a link so you can rewatch Rak's bit. Thank you very much indeed for a great question. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed. Right, gentlemen, we have 3 minutes left. There are 3 of you. So I've just been casting my eye through the kind of questions and trying to pick the most useful one. And I'm going to go for potentially the most awkward and obvious one, but I think it is really useful for people. It's the mistakes one. So in your opinion, what is the biggest mistake organizations are making in this move to Industry 4.0? And I'm going to ask, if I can, for a degree of personal honesty, in the sense of, I've seen this, I've lived this, please don't do it, and this is how you can avoid it. So Thierry, we'll start with you. I'm aware kind of your role is more sort of consultancy. What's the biggest mistake you think organizations are making?
I think the biggest mistake that is being made is forgetting that you need to keep in mind systems interoperability, because then they tend to stack up a lot of things that don't work together very well, and they think that technology is going to solve that. And what I've seen, in fact, was to stack up so many systems that the response time, when a user would ask, where are my goods, it would take 1 minute to get the answer. And so somehow you could say 1 minute is not so much, but you have to remember that the same operator is going to ask the request so many times every day, and he's going to lose 50% of his work time. So be careful that what you build is fast and efficient in the way it processes the data and provides the answer to the people who require the answer of where is my bucket. Doesn't need 1 minute, or shouldn't.
Thank you very much indeed. Rak?
Yeah, I agree with Thierry, and I'll add a different factor. I want to tell people, do not underestimate the human capital factor. Oftentimes when we talk about Industry 4.0, there's this whole question about, oh my God, if the robots take over, am I going to lose my job? And then there's a response saying, no, it's going to augment your job, and you're going to find new ways to do jobs, and you can retrain. Well, the reality here is people spend 20 years of their life trying to be a human being, and then they train 2 to 4 years to do a single job. And even that job is differentiated in so many different ways. It's very difficult to retrain somebody on the fly to do one job, which is kind of manufacturing on one end, to then become a digital service expert on the other. There's a significant amount of ramp up that you need to plan for in change management to make sure that your organization is fluidly transforming from an Industry 3.0 to an Industry 4.0. And what I mean by that is you got to plan how your resources are going to continue using their industrial knowledge and institutional knowledge to help you fuel your traditional businesses, but then bring in the right skills and resources and retooling certain skills that you need to make sure they adopt to that change. And most of the companies that I've met or seen, those who underestimate that end up paying a heavy price because they either lay off too many resources, or the people who transform do not have the skills or the experience to operate the new systems. or they just completely lose the identity of what they want to be as an operating company or culture.
Thank you, Ranjan. And just to sort of go a bit full circle, right at the start, you talked about it's important to make sure that you've got connections with your partners internally. So do you think a key partners for this transformation, HR is one of those key partners?
Yeah, Industry 4.0 is a CEO agenda. And the reason why it's a CEO agenda is not one officer in your company will be able to articulate the overall value it drives to your company. So I think Ranjan mentioned the CFO point of view. There's a benefit there. There's a supply chain point of view. There's an HR point of view. And all of those point of views need to come together into a single agenda of how we want to transform the company. Usually that is a CEO's agenda. So the CEO needs to make sure that he's thinking about all these things long-term to make sure that this transformation is successful.
Thank you. And Ranjan, same question to you, sir.
Actually, it's right on the area of what Ghosh is going to mention is that, look, to me, one of the biggest problems that we have with this discussion about digital transformation is there are just too many organizations focusing on each function doing their own thing. We allocate our budgets by function. So each one of these functions, you talk about supply chain, you talk about manufacturing operations, or you talk about finance, they get budget at the beginning of the year, they allocate certain amount of it for digitization, and they chase after those by implementing certain projects associated with it. The biggest issue is many of these organizations are not really anybody tying them all together to see how cross-integration, cross-pollination across functions, you could add a more comprehensive benefit than you otherwise would get by implementing solution function by function. Right now, it is just too much siloed by each function, and we are leaving out a lot of dollar on the table. Once again, I'll talk more about it tomorrow.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. So avoid silos in people and in technologies, and make sure you consider everybody moving forwards. Ranjan, Ra, Thierry, really, really appreciate you taking the time. Ranjan, look forward to hearing from you tomorrow. Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen. Have a great rest of the day, great rest of the summit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.